Uh-huh. How are you? Oh my goodness. I hope your week is off to a good start and you had a wonderful weekend. Is everything all right? Are you feeling good? I'm sure you are, and probably fresh. You are well rested. I'm good. I am good. I'm very excited about, Christmas is just a few days away. Do you like Christmas? I like Christmas still at my big age. I had a wonderful weekend as well. I went to a trade fair in Karen at the Marula Manor. So they had an open market where all these big brands from East Africa would come and showcase their merchandise. And it made for a good, quiet, alone time. And so I had my mask on and my hat, and I was walking around with my coffee, feeling very free and enjoying myself. And so I was walking to different stands and looking at the merchandise. And then at the tail end of the evening, I walked up to this stand and I was looking at their wares. And this very helpful lady and I went back and forth. I was asking her questions about what they were selling. And then at the tail end, maybe 15 minutes in, so I was thanking her and I'm about to leave. And then she's like, "Oh, by the way, and I watch your stuff." I was like, "What?" She was very professional. Jael, if you're watching this, thank you. So that's how I spent my weekend. Apart from that, I went to have breakfast. Not really breakfast, you'd call it brunch because I started eating from noon. And I love watching people. It's one of the things I really enjoy to do. So I watch people and I watch the way they're talking, the way they're relating, especially couples. Those are my favorite. You can almost tell when people are fighting and they're trying to just eat, so they try and get along. And so I was watching people and really thinking about my thoughts. And I'm going to keep it light today. I've been thinking about traits, if at all, that you think you must share, important traits for a successful relationship. Important traits to share for the success of a relationship. Do you think, people talk about compatibility a lot. My friend was taking me to task the other day and he was accusing me of spending a lot of time by myself. He was saying, you are a lot by yourself and that's not good. If at all you're looking to get married, maybe you need to start incorporating people. And so it made for a very thought-provoking conversation. And I was just like, no, I don't think it's a bad thing. And it's not a good thing entirely, but you need a healthy balance. So while having breakfast over the weekend, I was thinking about some of the things I think would be important as traits. Sometimes they are very harmless. They're just like, come on, that cannot be a thing. But really further down the road, they can present a bigger problem in a relationship. So yeah, I'll share those with you. Let me know what you think. And if you've had such an experience, please make it as open as and honest as you want it to be on the comment section or even on my DM. And while at it, remember to subscribe on the YouTube channel. So again, as I said, not necessarily serious things, but further down in a relationship, if you are stuck on these things, I think they can be a problem. One of the things I've been thinking about, again, from numerous reading in the past and just conversations with friends of mine who've been married longer, and some of the things I hear them talk about. I think you want to check for self-reliance versus interdependence, all right? If you are self-reliant, so that you really value things like your space, you really want your space, you really value your alone time, it's very important to you, especially people who are introverted are very big on that. And then now you couple up with somebody who's really big on family coming over, friends coming over, hey, come over. They're big on that sort of stuff. There are people who are like that, eh? They want maybe every twice a month to have people over for dinner. Big dinners, 15 people, and they eat and laugh into the night. But here you are, you really value your space to be just you, and maybe you can accommodate your partner. You see, it's very harmless. In your mind, you'd be like, maybe when guys are around, I'd want them to maybe I'd go away to my sisters. But if this partner of yours has a habit of having people around every often, then you can start cramping your style, don't you think? And so I've been thinking around about that quite a lot. Other people are really community based and they love family. Other people, not so much. And so sometimes when you're dating, I think you want to factor in that. I've been thinking about that a lot. And even the need to have that conversation with your significant other about how you go around it. I was reading a book by, I think again, if I'm not wrong, Susan Cain, and she was saying that a couple she was talking to, they had to reach an agreement And while the husband was very big on having people around, and the lady not so much, because she really appreciated just to be by herself in her space. So they reached an agreement. So instead of having this guy used to have two innings, if we can call them, every month. And he had a big group of people, upwards of sometimes 22 people coming over. And so he wanted the lady to be around his wife so that they can bond together. And the lady would never want it. She'd just be like, can I go to my sister's or go someplace else? And so they reached an agreement to have one such event every month instead of two. And then the lady requested also that instead of making her have, a big conversation with everybody, I'd say at the tail end of the table, the way Jesus would sit at the end, presumably, and then talk to the disciples. So she said that she prefers one-to-one conversations because she does better that way, like most of us, again, who are introverted. And so, so they tweaked that, and they say they're happy. She says she's still, at the tail end of it, she was saying she's still struggling, but at least they talked about it. So that's the first thing. If you're self-reliant and you're coupling up with somebody who values interdependence, it's a conversation worth having. I think you need to really either match in that trait, or if not, then have a conversation around ways you will entertain your many guests, or ways you will continue to achieve your alone time or enjoy your alone space. All right? Second thing I think is important is unspoken expectations, because they are relationship killers. And sometimes the unspoken expectations, again, can be very innocuous. Something like you grew up thinking that, say, when you get married, your wife, upon your mother becoming sick, should just dash to the village and take care of your mother. And your wife grew up thinking that, your mother will be taken care of by her sisters, because that's what she grew up seeing. And so if you don't bring that up in conversation about your expectations and assume that these are the person who should just run to the village or to the nearest hospital to take care of your mother, it can turn things topsy-turvy, don't you think? So I think that's another thing worth talking about, because you'll start complaining and grumbling over your wife being absent, or even your mother can start complaining that, the daughter-in-law is not very relational, but it's nothing you brought about. You've just assumed it. And now the unspoken expectation is bringing a problem. All right? Yeah? A friend of mine was telling me once, the first time he took his wife to the village, she just curled up with her book while all the aunties were going to fetch firewood. And then the aunties, those most vocal ones, were like, what's the deal with your wife? She doesn't know what time it is. So again, those can bring a bit of a rift between you and your significant other, I think. All right? Someone once said that marriage is easy, it's a living together that's difficult. So these things are always so challenging in terms of living together. They're very tough when you start doing the living together. And if you see that you are really vastly misaligned in terms of your expectations, then maybe you need to invite the conversation around compatibility. Because maybe it could be pointing to you guys not being so compatible. And it's tough to date or marry when you're not compatible. What do you think? Now, the need to share a similar outlook in life is the third thing, which I think is very important. I used to know somebody who was very pessimistic. They'd say the most sad thing about their lives. They'd be like, oh, you know what? I'll tarmac unto death. And those things used to really upset me. So I used to tell them, don't speak like that. And then they'd rebut and say, I'm not speaking like that about your life. You live your life and speak positively. Me, I'm talking like this about my life. And I'd just be so frustrated, people who like to catastrophize, they are perpetually making even the most innocent thing look so severely bad. I think sharing a general outlook in life is very important. It really is. It's very important. All right? A friend of mine was telling me, we had brunch maybe a fortnight ago, and she was telling me, look, it's important to me that a man has a home in the village. I need a man with a home in the village. And so, if the man you're dating does not think it's important to have a home in the village, it's going to be a problem. it will be a problem. So do you both think economic achievement, for instance, is important? A friend of mine was telling me about how his father was asking him to buy some property, and he kept telling his dad that his property is in his mind because he's an academia. So if you're dating somebody who thinks his property is in his mind, and you want a physical house and physical land and a few cars, it can be a problem. You see, it can be a problem. Because he'd be like, oh, me, I'm going to lecture in Europe. That's how I feel nourished. And you're thinking, we need a car. Frederick, it's going to be a problem. Yeah? Outlook in terms of family coming over. How do you like, for instance, their parents over living with you? There are people who are like that. They're like, oh, mommy, I'll never leave you. Immediately you start coughing and your back is bending, you're going to move in with us. Because they're tight like that. And you're like, hey, not in my house. Octogenarians in my house. Hey, no way. Talk about that. Looks harmless, but it can cause a lot of problems. How do you like, all right, for them to invite their extended family over to live with you? Or would you only prefer that your family lives with you and not her family or his family? Something to think about. And then finally, which I think is equally very important, their love of travel or adventure, or their curiosity versus your comfort, repetition, and familiarity. Those look innocuous, but when you start doing the journey that is life together, cause serious rifts. Because somebody might start upping and saying you're wasteful and you're wasting money. They don't understand this thing about flying to random places. What's that about, Jennifer? And they'd be like, you found me like this, Frederick. And they'd be like, but I go to work and come here. I don't die. Why do you have to keep flying? We can put that money in an investment. What do you think? Good evening.